important, must for your examination point of view, and some of the facts could be directly asked for your examination, so focus well on this topic. Now let's understand how it all started. So we say Leuka. What is Leuka? It is the last universal cellular ancestor from where the viruses basically primitively roamed and evolved. The evolution of the basic molecular genetic material that started was the basis for the development of the virus over the years, and you have the various varieties that have been seen in the last century. That means in the last period of 100 years, nearly 150 million people have been killed because of viral disease. So we need to understand the impact of viruses very, very thoroughly, and scientific researchers need to be pursued in a right direction. Let's talk about a very simple pox virus. You all are familiar with the smallpox. Now, smallpox, the virus, the vaccine for the smallpox was discovered by Edward Jenner in 1796, and recently in 1980s, WHO has suggested that the world has eradicated smallpox. So far, we are not pretty sure that smallpox has ceased to exist. It could be a possibility that small pockets somewhere in the remote forest areas or in the tribal pockets, there could be cases of smallpox that are still into prevalence. But as per the random sample surveys that have been done and the broad sampling that has been done, in 1980 we were able to say that smallpox has been eradicated from the society. So you can understand the impact that took place. So from 1796 to 1980, that's a huge period of nearly 200 years that took for us to even eradicate one of the viruses, that was pox virus. So we need to be very, very careful in understanding the impact of these viruses on human beings and the behavior of these viruses, the changing patterns of these viruses. Now, some of the diseases like Zika virus, yellow fever, Ebola are being endemic to specific areas, and there are specific organs that they target to. Now, coming on to the structure of virus could be classified as living or non-living. There has been always controversy. The things that have an ability to move are under the category of living organisms. However, there is no molecular movement that is seen in viruses. The molecular movement starts only when they are able to infect, and when they are able to infect, that point of time there is a molecular movement. So there has been always a controversy whether to keep viruses in the category of living or a non-living. It has been a long proven debate so far. But when we talk about the structure of virus, it is composed of either DNA or RNA with a protein layer, and this protein covering is known as capsid. Now, if we focus on the origin of viruses, there have been various theories that have been propounded. One such interesting theory is the regression theory. The regression theory says that viruses were able to emerge due to the degeneration of the existing cells. So you have two of the protocells that are given here, and with the degeneration of that, you have the emergence of virus that has been seen, and this is a process of reductive evolution that has come up. The protocells are the primitive cells or the original cells. So this was one of the theories. The second theory says the escape gene hypothesis. The escape gene hypothesis says that viruses have a capability to replicate, but they are escaped as infectious agents, and once they are escaped as infectious agents, they have an ability to infect another cell, and therefore this theory is known as the escaped gene theory, because the genes of the viruses escape and they are able to affect and infect another. The next theory is virus early hypothesis, that says that viruses have evolved from early genetic matter, and you had the pool of replicons that are present here which had virus-like entity, and slowly and gradually they became complex and there was evolution of virus that took place. The last important theory is the Chimeric theory, and this says that there have been selfish replications of the first cellular original life form, the leucas that we have talked about, and this were finally captured by the living organisms. They had a protein code that was started to that started to build up around the virus, and this was known as capsid. With the continued evolution and the changes that have been seen, there was diversification in the scope of virology and the study of viruses that was seen. Also, Bergenic is considered to be one of the propounders or the fathers of virology, and he gave a term contagium vivum fluidum, which means it is contagious, it is living, and it is very, very fluid in nature. Later on, there were further researches done by Stanley and his colleagues who demonstrated the molecular structure of the virus. They had even received Nobel Prize for the same cause. If we talk about different kinds of viruses have a unique background, we would say. If we focus on polio virus, it is around 25 to 30 nanometers and has a single RNA strand. However, if we talk about influenza virus, it is around 80 nanometers and has 8 RNA strands. So two of the viruses, one is polio with 1 RNA strand, the other is influenza virus with 8 RNA strands, and then you have the pox virus, the smallpox, which is usually a brick-shaped virus, and it has a double-stranded DNA genome. So if we are talking about vaccination, we need to be very, very sure what kind of virus it is, whether it has a DNA messenger or RNA messenger, and based on that, the vaccines could be further developed. If we talk about viruses in general, it is a unique study. Now, you might have heard about Avogadro number, that is 10 raised to power 24, and viruses have a close connection to Avogadro number. How? Because they are capable of creating 10 raised to power 24 infections every second. So you can understand the extent of infections that could be created with the mutations that could occur due to viruses. Similarly, 1 liter of the coastal seawater has much more viruses than the total number of people on this planet. Again, an interesting fact that you might be surprised about is viruses are home to nearly 200 megatons of carbon, which is equivalent to 75 million blue whales. So that is the extent of carbon that is present in the viruses itself. So definitely they are a unique part of the living world, a unique part of the study that must be carried forward. And nearly 10 million viruses that are there, and with 10 million we have nearly 1 million bacteria. So the ratio of virus to bacteria is 10:1, much more highly prevalent as compared to bacteria. But there have been well-quoted instances where we have seen viruses are helpful. A very good example that we would discuss today is the braconid wasp. Now, braconid wasp is originally parasitic in nature. It lays eggs, and these eggs live on the body of caterpillar. Once these eggs hatch and they turn into grubs, these grubs simply eat the caterpillars, and that's how they have their life cycle. Now, braconid wasp, while giving birth to the young ones, the eggs that are being produced, it gives in 2 forms of viruses that are there. One virus is which is meant for the replication set, and that is the wasp used to create this virus in the ovaries. The second is the virus that would affect, that is virulence or virulent, it would affect the caterpillar and kill the caterpillar. Now, both of the viruses that are being released by the braconid wasp are essential for the young braconids to survive, because the young braconids can survive only and only once they are able to eat the caterpillar and they live on the body of caterpillar. So it is a kind of defense mechanism, we could say, for the braconid wasp, the young ones of the braconid wasp, in order to survive. Similarly, there are numerous other instances. For example, white clover, cryptic virus, is another good example, which basically suppress the process of nodulation in the legumes, so that adequate amount of nitrogen is being present in the soil. So there are various ways under which we understand that viruses have been useful or act as defense mechanism for certain organisms, and it is well defined at the initial point whether this virus would be a replicating virus or it would be a kind of virulent virus. A virulent virus would be one that would harm the another one, but it won't replicate from one species to another. A replicating virus would be one that would replicate from one species to another, and it may or may not harm. Most of the sea organisms that are seen, the viruses do not actually harm those, and they live in a kind of close association, or I could say a kind of symbiotic relation with most of the sea animals or the sea creatures that are there. Viral infections at a very young age are usually good because it is a means to train the immune system of the body. Human peg virus C, or which is known as the hepatitis G virus, does not seem to cause any of the disease in human beings. However, there have been studies that if a HIV patient is being infected by the hepatitis G virus, there could be cases where this kind of study could lead into a positive study. That means it could be beneficial for the patient rather than bringing a harm to the patient. So it's a kind of process of assimilation and adaptation where the immune response to a certain virus is being built by the body, and there are certain cases where you have latent viruses that are seen. Latent viruses are those which are non-symptomatic. They remain in the body for a long duration of time, and a human body or any other body is unable to identify a kind of harmful virus versus a normal virus. So that's how it actually happens. Now, whenever a virus infects, there are two types of immune responses that are generated. The first is the innate, which is an inborn response, and the second is the adaptive response. Adaptive response usually occurs 6 to 7 days after a person is exposed to a viral fever. So let's say you have a viral fever in this season. After 6 and 7 days, you would start to develop a adaptive immune response to that virus, and usually a second time you go out and you have a close contact with another person who is suffering from the same viral fever, you won't probably get infected again because body has developed a adaptive immune response to that virus. However, if the mutation of the same virus is present, there are chances that you can fall sick again. There is another immune response system in the body which is an innate response. Innate is an inborn response, and there are two types of innate response. The first is the interferons and the second is the cytokine response. Interferons are a response which explains that the virus travels from this cell to the nearby cell and it tells them to build up a defense mechanism. That is to slow the spread of the virus. The second is a cytokine response. So the interferon response, I repeat again, is a response which informs the neighbor. So let's say there was a robbery in your house, so you immediately inform your neighbor and your neighbor is at high alert. So it's something like that. So interferon is basically a response system where a virus informs the neighbors that there is a virus and it's starting to travel, so the spread usually gets slower and there is a defense mechanism that is being built up by the neighbors in the case of robbers and the neighboring cell in the case of the viral impact that is being seen. Similarly, there are cytokines. Now, cytokine is a message to the circulatory system, the epithelial lining of that, to eat the invader and eat the infected cell. So, whatever cell is being infected would be eaten away, would be grasped away, and this is the time when one thinks about a vaccination system, because this is the process that would be applicable to develop the vaccine. Now, a very good question arises is development of vaccine is easy because it's easy to kill the virus. Because of the cytokine process, we understand this virus could be eaten and easily destroyed. But at the same time, the host cell, the cell in which the virus is residing, that is also destroyed. So when we are building a vaccine, when we are developing a vaccine, what is the major challenge? The major challenge is that we are able to kill the virus, that is fine, but at the same time, the host in which the virus dwells is also destroyed, which is harmful for the body. And therefore, development of vaccination becomes a real challenge. So these two type of immune response systems are very, very important to understand. Now, when there is a viral infection that occurs, typically what happens is less than 1% of the genetic material of the cell gets infected. So it's just less than 1% of the genetic material that is being infected. However, in case of the SARS-CoV or the SARS or the COVID, it's around 60% of the genetic material that is infected. So there is a very, very high proportion of infection that is being registered in the recent SARS or COVID. Again, if we talk about diseases like HIV, which is again caused due to viruses, there are 4 strains of HIV, which are M, N, O and P, of which only M has a kind of response system that is being built to the host tetherin. Now, tetherin is the protein which tethers to the newly made up viruses in order to stop the release from the cell, and that is seen only with protein M in the case of HIV. So, of the 4 strains, only M would be one of the successful ones that could be seen. Also, what is important to understand with the viruses is virus have a quick ability to replicate. That means virus is present in one of the cells, it would infect one of the cell, quickly move to the next cell and attach to the cell membrane. As you can see in this diagram, it quickly infects one of the cell, attaches to the cell membrane and infects the another, and then moves out. So there is a kind of viral swarm that is being built. That means within few seconds or few hours, you would say that a huge number of cells are being targeted by the virus. Rather than just the one cell which it starts to infect, it slowly and gradually spreads like a swarm and it affects a huge number of cells. As we have seen in the beginning, viruses have a protein layer. This protein layer is what is known as capsid. Now, on this capsid, there are 2 types of proteins that are present, HA and NA. NA is the neuraminidase protein and HA is the hematogluten protein. There are 18 H proteins that are seen and 11 N proteins that are seen. So a combination of 11 and 18, that is nearly 198 different forms of influenzas are seen only as a result of influenza A. So these are the subtypes of only influenza A. Of this 198, we are aware about only 131 subtypes that are there, of which we have noticed 2 of the species which are highly in circulation, which are N1, H1N1 and H3N2. And the last 4 pandemics that have occurred on the globe were because of these 2 strains that were there, that is the H1N1 and the H3N2. That means there is a huge amount of knowledge that is still lacking, and the protein structure is responsible for the quick changes and the mutations that are there. The next is mutation. What does the word mutation mean? Mutation means the change in the genetic structure, and that is where there are 2 types of mutations that we understand. The first is the shift mutation, the other is the drift mutation. Drift mutation actually means there is a very small change in the genetic composition. So that means there is a virus that has affected the body and we have brought a vaccine for that. For example, H1N1, we brought a vaccine for H1N1. H1N1, I would say, is not a good example because it is an example of the shift mutation. So let's take any other virus, and there is a vaccination brought against that virus. Now, even if that virus is mutating, there would be a small genetic change that would be seen, and this could be compensated by a small change in the vaccine that is there. So, overall, you have a vaccination for that virus, and it is very, very highly effective. And that is a case of the drift mutation. So, drift mutation can be easily controlled. However, there is shift mutation. Shift, as you understand from the name itself, there is a quick shift. That means H1N1, I would bring into example here. So H1N1, when it started to spread in 2009, there was a shift mutation that was seen. That means the strain of H1N1 was different in the continent of Americas, in the continent of Europe, in the continent of Asia, and because of the shift mutation, there was a difficulty understanding the spread and controlling the spread, and it turned out into a severe pandemic during that time. So shift mutations are drastic mutations. Changes in the vaccinations for shift mutations are really difficult. So we are yet to decipher the pattern of the COVID-19 and how it goes. The next important thing that we need to understand is the last four pandemics, as we saw, were because of the two viruses that we already understood, but both of these two viruses underwent shift mutations, and therefore they turned out into severe pandemics. The next important thing is, since 1997, the idea of curbing SARS, the idea of curbing H1N1 was at its prime importance, and therefore a network was established across the globe, and this was known as the FluNet network. Now, FluNet network is a network which records all the various types of flus that occur and the mutations that are related to the various flus or the influenzas that are spreading into the region. Now, how do we control viruses? As we have seen, vaccination is one of the major ways. Smallpox vaccination had been pretty successful, and since then we have been planning to prepare a universal vaccine for all viruses. Rather than targeting each and every virus separately, why don't we think about a vaccination that would be a universal vaccination, and it would, rather than affecting the individual H protein or N protein, it would be affecting the third protein, which is the matrix, and that remains unchanged for all the viruses. So the idea is to focus on a vaccination drive which could be a universal vaccination, and that would be one of the most successful ways to curb all kind of viral infections, because there are nearly 1.7 million viruses that are present in mammals and birds, and there has been a severe transmission of viruses from the aquatic animals, the mammals, into human beings over the recent centuries. 30% of these cases are attributed to land use changes, deforestation, industrialization, urbanization, cutting of the forest, which have brought these species in close contact with human beings and brought in a lot of spread. So even if we are able to develop a successful vaccine, let's say for COVID-19, there could be another severe virus that could come in. If we want to get foolproof from it, the only possible way is to work for a universal vaccination for all kind of viruses that exist. One of the recent studies have brought in drastic, mind-blowing scenarios with the resistance. So far, we have been focusing on the term which is AMR, antimicrobial resistance, and that was true with the case of antibiotics being given to cows and the domestic animals. The idea is, with such amount of antibiotics that is going into their body, those are being significantly affecting the environmental system, and the same has been true with the recent use of antiviral drugs in case of the viral spread, the COVID-19. How does it affect? The recent studies have quoted that these antiviral drugs are released in the human waste, and when they are released in the animal waste, they are being merged into the environment through the urine of the person, and as a result they start to contaminate the organisms, mainly the aquatic organisms, the organisms affecting the basic life structure. And as a result, these organisms are now developing resistance, and since they are developing resistance to drug, the next viral that would affect those organisms and further affect human being would be further more virulent, more dangerous rather. And therefore, the right curve on these antiviral drugs again, or the right strategies for the use of antiviral drugs in order to prevent the misuse, is another important development that should be taken into consideration immediately. So those were some of the key highlights that we have focused on in our section on understanding the viruses, along with the other developments that we have talked about in the down to earth edition. Stay tuned for many more updates from our side. Have a wonderful day ahead.